Welcome to the Top Order podcast. It's second semi-final time at Lahore in the Champions Trophy. I've got an ecstatic Stu with me to go through the Black Caps victory and their march to yet another ICC tournament final. All coming up on the Top Order podcast. Stay tuned. Well, mate, you can, I think viewers for sure and listeners in a second when they hear your dulcet tones will know that you are possibly the most delighted man on the planet this morning. Look, a really, really comprehensive victory in the second final or the second semi-final in Lahore. Setting up a fantastic final in Dubai. Everything went right. Your top order set the platform. Your finishers came on board and did what they needed to do to finish off the innings. Santner did a sensational job as well with his captaincy and his spin bowling and marshalling the troops. But mate, you just must be absolutely delighted.
Delighted. It's funny. Delighted is the word that I'd written down. I'm delighted for the team because they've had clear plans about how they want to play their cricket in this tournament. They're playing smart. They're following their template. They're just executing on every single level. And, alongside of India, they've played the best cricket in this Champions Trophy. We've got the best two sides, the final that I think the tournament deserves. And yeah, I'm just absolutely stoked because, we'll I guess in a minute get to all of the contributions. But I think when you look at all the contributions in almost all the games, we're sort of going, it's a complete performance. It's, there's a lot of different people that are contributing. These guys, there's these real standout performers. And, to be saying complete performance 2 or 3 times during a tournament even is very impressive. And the way they're going about things is fantastic.
Yeah, well, mate, let's talk a little bit about whether you can have a fifth complete performance in the in the final, because we obviously want to talk a little bit about that from a Black Caps perspective. But let's go back to the start of the day, and we've kind of talked about this, I think, throughout the course of the tournament. But winning the toss and having a bat, the dew has been more of a factor in Pakistan than it's been in Dubai throughout the course of the tournament. So there was decision one. From a selections perspective, I think it was probably pretty straightforward the way that you were gonna set up. But yeah, if you kind of then fast forward 50 overs to 360 for 6 after your allotments, and we were just saying off air, like you set the perfect platform, didn't you? Really, with Rachin and with Kane, which I previewed actually last night. I said Kane would score 100 like Virat, but. The finishers did their job as well. So, your Daryl Mitchells and your Glenn Phillips and your even your Michael Bracewells came in and did what they needed to do and strike at well above, 120, 130, even 180 in Glenn Phillips' case coming in. Did you at half time think tactics spot on, toss, right decision, and we've got enough? Or were you still worried at 360 odd for 6?
Still, look, my nature is I'm always worried. David Miller, it was 89 off 15 balls, and David Miller was at the other end, and I was going, that's a bit worrying. He's hitting it pretty well. So, my nature is to be a little bit concerned. But I think if we want to look at how New Zealand went about things, I mean, Rachin and Kane is the perfect way. You mentioned it before with the platform. The way they went about things was fantastic. And I thought it was really interesting listening to Rachin talk afterwards. He talked a little bit about how, and even us, when we were chatting during the game, we were saying pitch looks a little bit sticky when they bowl, those cutters into the wicket. And Gedi, I thought, did a really nice job up front of doing that. Picks up Will Young's wicket. And you're sort of going, okay, these were thinking originally it looks flat. It's a 300, well over 300 sort of pitch. But then Rachin talked about how they'd decided, okay, we're going to aim for 300. But then every time they sort of did that, Kane would just start upping the ante. And you could see that through the innings. And I it's sort of something that's, Kane sometimes takes a while to build into his innings, and he did it a bit today. But, the way he was able to just take a step up. And look, there were a few near misses at times. Rachin had one off Maharaj. Kane, tough drop chance for Klaasen there, skied one off Markram that fell into the gap. But yeah, I mean, Rachin, we love Rachin. I mean, maybe I'll get you to talk in a second about Rachin, maybe that pull shot off Janssen early on and how good his bat was sounding. But yeah, I just loved the way that Kane, the tempo that he applied to that innings, because I thought that in a lot of ways he's usually the anchor, but today I thought he was the one that was setting the tone and putting the foot down every time we needed to do that. So yeah, I was really impressed with Kane's innings today.
Yeah, look, mightily impressed with both of them, and I think we've talked a hell of a lot about Rachin on the podcast, haven't we? The sound off that, I think DSC is the brand of bat. Other bats, of course, available. It sounded great, and yeah, certainly that pull shot that he got away relatively early. It was like a rifle crack, across the ground. What I thought was really impressive from Kane is, we've talked a lot about, and we'll probably come on to talk about some of the bigger hitters, David Miller, for example, for South Africa today. Not ever worried about whether or not he's going to clear the rope. Kane probably is worried whether he's going to clear the rope. And I think what's been really impressive with him is the way that he places the ball. So, and I think that's where I, just actually sort of took a little bit of notice today with the way that he batted. When you'd seen him sometimes in the IPL, slightly smaller grounds, he'd get the ball away for those one bounce falls into those gaps. But a lot of his game is built on, weighting the ball and getting twos and really putting the field under pressure. But he seems to have been able to up that ante, because the way that he was actually finding the fence throughout the course of the day today. Only a couple of sixes, but the placement of some of his fours, particularly when he went inside out. I thought, his use of the ramp has been pretty good. It was his downfall today. And I think that's the only blot you could probably put on the copybook for Rachin and Kane today, is falling in the way that they fell almost so close to each other, within 30 or 40 runs of each other. You just actually wanted, one of them to really probably get Tom Latham or Glenn Phillips in for a little bit longer. And then, we might have been looking at a 380, 400 score, but you can't really grumble when you win the game by, when you look at the scorecard, 50 runs. In reality, they were nowhere near, and there was a bit of pyrotechnics at the end from David Miller. But yes, the perfect platform and the perfect capitalisation of that platform by Phillips and Mitchell, and a little bit of Bracewell coming in at the end, which put all of those bowlers under pressure. You mentioned Ngidi taking the pace off pretty well, but even he ended up going for 70 odd or thereabouts. And bizarrely when you sort of put it in those words, he was the pick of the bowlers, but he still went for over 7 and over today.
Yeah, look, and I mean, I should mention Rachin. He's scored 500s now across 2 ICC events, 13 innings. It's pretty remarkable for, we often, I think, kind of oversell his age. We say he's a young guy, but he's 25 now. Like he's an established player. But to deliver on this big stage so many times now, and it's mightily impressive. You mentioned the finishing. I'm keen to hear what you thought about that, because we were talking off air a little bit around. They'd built that platform, as you said. They fell quite quickly, but then the fact that Mitchell, they got 110 for 3 off that last 10 overs, and it really did push them past. I think what was a par score. I think par was probably 320, 330, and that really pushed them. And when we talk about the bowling, I think we'll talk about the pressure that South Africa was under because they got up to such a good score. So anything on Mitchell and Phillips that you want to add?
No, look, not a massive amount to add. I think obviously, Mitchell, I really like him as a cricketer. He's pretty uncomplicated. Phillips is, at times flattered to deceive a little bit. I've even found it really weird. I'm not saying he's not a great fielder, but you go back to, I think actually playing against England, where he dropped 5 or 6 catches in that series, and at one point looked like he'd got feet on the end of his hands, but certainly what he adds in the field and his dynamism is absolutely fantastic. But it was good that they got going and put that finish on. But I think what I don't think can be understated in this is that we've talked a lot about platforms, and particularly as an Englishman, I'm pretty frustrated that they've talked sometimes about setting that platform for their equivalents, their Liam Livingstones coming in at that sort of 6 or 7, and they've not really got going. What New Zealand did today, though, is they had 2 guys who set that platform. They had, 200s. And that is the difference, I think, in having that massive partnership of, over 150 or whatever, which, when you're playing one-day cricket, you and I have been there in club cricket when people put on 150 partnership, and you kind of wonder where the next wicket's coming from. So, yeah, I think that the solidity of that platform really did allow that launch, because they talk about this cliche of double the score after 30 overs. The one that I always sort of go back to is you can basically go as hard as you like for as many wickets as you've got in hand as overs are left. So, for example, if you're 4 down, you can actually go hell for leather for 6 overs at the end, because you've really got that ability to put the foot down from that perspective. So having that platform of being able to have 6 wickets in hand going into the final 10 overs allowed you to really put the icing on that cake and score over 100 in that last 10. And that's really where I think, this game was set up. So, that's what I've got to say about the finishing.
And I think if we flip it round to the other side in terms of the platform, that's what South Africa was unable to do. And I think, we look at that Bavuma and Van der Dussen partnership. There was a long period there where, I think it was even almost to the 30th over where they were ahead in terms of the comparisons, run comparisons, and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I'm sure South African fans are feeling a bit critical maybe of the way that some of those guys went out and got starts and got out. But, I would give a lot of credit to particularly Mitchell Santner and the way New Zealand bowled and rotated strike. Do you want to go really on because you mentioned to me before we started recording that you've been just so impressed with Santner throughout this tournament and not necessarily just his bowling.
Yeah, look, I think bowling, kind of goes to that saying today, going for under 4.5 and over. And I think, look, I'll leave you to talk about the quality of New Zealand's spin today. 28 overs of spin, only really Phillips, who got a little bit of tap going for 9 and over. Everybody else going for certainly 4s and 5s. And again, that was the squeeze that really kept the pressure on South Africa all the way through. But it's been his captaincy that has been as impressive. I think he's probably one of the best white ball spinners going around at the moment. But I think from a captaincy perspective, particularly when he's got former international skipper still in the side. Tom Latham's done a bit of captaincy as well. So there's 2 or 3 guys in that side that have had that mantle. So for him to be able to do that in the calm demeanour that he does, and you just look at the little conferences that he has with his senior players, he looks completely unflustered. He looks in total control. I think it's helped that he's played plenty of franchise cricket and he's highly rated in that format as well. But he's just been quietly brilliant as an international white ball skipper. I'd probably say the best going around at the moment. That's how good he really is.
I think we talked about, Raj and I talked about the fields that he was setting in that Pakistan game, the first game in this tournament. And just, he did it again a bit with Bracewell today. They've obviously thought about that. And, I said it right at the top, right? They've had really clear plans about how they want to play the game right throughout. And, if I can kind of transition to his bowling, when last time New Zealand-India game and I was looking ahead to this game, one of the things I'd said is it's going to be so important for New Zealand to chip out wickets through the middle, and Santner was going to be the key for that, and he certainly was today. All 3 of his wickets were absolutely lovely because he beats Bavuma in the flight, gets him playing, gets him coming down the wicket. You could see quite a lot of on both sides. Kane was trying to get down the wicket, Rachin was trying to get down the wicket to Maharaj. That almost cost both of them at times. But, Santner was able to do that, bring Bavuma down the wicket, get him caught, then he bowls Van der Dussen, completely deceives him in the flight and the speed and all of that stuff. And then the big one is the Klaasen one, because we know how dangerous he is, and to get him so early. And I mean, in a way, the weird thing about that is that led to Matt Henry going off the field, which then I think led to Mitchell Santner bringing Rachin on probably earlier than he thought he would, or maybe not even going to bring him on. And it was those overs from 31 to 40 where New Zealand really, really squeezed South Africa, probably more than I thought that they would. I mean, we'd picked up a few wickets before that, but, Rachin one for 20 off 5 overs. Phillips, yes, he went for 9s, but he got a couple of wickets. And I think in that period, I can't remember, I don't have it with me, but I think it was about 46 or something for 4 or 40. We really squeezed them. And that was the period for New Zealand where Rachin and Kane put their foot down again and went 70 and, sort of got things really set up for a big finish. Whereas New Zealand was able to, keep grabbing wickets right throughout. And even Michael Bracewell, I didn't think he was at his best today. Van der Dussen really disrupted his flow a little bit, got him sort of moved around in the crease, tried the lap shot, and then he'd trying to get Bracewell to bowl a bit faster, a bit quicker, and then he'd stand there and deliver. But, Bracewell still finishes with 1 for 50 or 53 off his 10. So, look, it was a really disciplined performance from New Zealand with the ball, and bodes well for this semi-final, or for this final, I should say.
A word about South Africa, and look, I guess, some pyrotechnics at the end for David Miller. I thought it was a little bit odd that certainly the South African commentators talking it up as if it was, important. Even just sort of having a celebration and the sort of, the high fives and the way they were talking about it felt a bit odd when you're going to lose a one-dayer, and particularly a semi-final by 50 runs. But not to take away some very, very clean, very, very clean hitting in a lost cause at the end there for David Miller.
Yeah, and look, I wonder if this is more around Miller the person, and he's 35 now. He debuted in 2010. I have no idea. I don't know if it's come out or anything, but maybe this is his last ICC event for South Africa. Let's see. Let's see, because there was a promo on him, or a bit of stuff at the start of the match, talked about what a great team player he is, what a great person he is in the environment. And I mean, as I said, they were 89. They needed 89 of 15, and I was still sitting there going, gee, David Miller's got a lot of power. And I mean, I think, you look at the way that his innings went is probably a lot of credit for how New Zealand bowled through those 31 to 40 as well, because he had 50 off 46 balls, which, isn't he needed to be going quicker than that, really, but he couldn't because everyone else was getting out around him. And then suddenly you see how devastating his finish could have been if we weren't picking up those wickets, because once he got going, that wicket is, once you're in on any of these wickets really in Pakistan, you can score so quickly. And they couldn't stop him. Basically, he could hit a boundary wherever he wanted, and some of the shots he played were fantastic. So I wonder if it was more around just being happy for him. He seemed to do a baby sort of celebration. I don't know what's going on.
Absolutely nothing away from him as a cricketer. I think he's been explosive. He's been great to watch over 160 ODIs or thereabouts, and a pretty decent franchise career as well. But at that point it was more like an exhibition match, wasn't it, rather than anything on the game. But like you say, I'm sure there were a few other Black Caps fans doing the math and going, well, they only need 28 and over. It's not impossible. Let's take a little bit of a look forward to the final, Stu. Look, I guess I want to ask a couple of questions, and I think Matt Henry, obviously, did he injure himself with that catch? And has any news come out on that yet? And then Will O'Rourke as well, an off day for him. He got a little bit clattered at the end, didn't he, by Klaasen? By Miller. Yes, I mean, not Will O'Rourke's best day, and I think we've seen that from Will O'Rourke throughout his one-day career. That I think for anyone that bowls at that speed, you can go
basically, and
Yeah.
particularly with the lengths that Will O'Rourke bowls, and almost the fact that I don't, he's early in his career. I don't think he has the change ups or the variety that maybe other bowlers and that we expect he might develop in this in this format. So yeah, it wasn't a great day for him, but I don't think it's too alarming. Really, I mean, he's been excellent throughout the tournament. On Matt Henry, yes, he injured himself, went off, but it sounds like it was more just a painful fall. He obviously
Yeah.
came back and bowled a couple of overs at the end there. I think he would have kept bowling if we needed him to. It seemed like, once Mitchell Santner didn't seem as concerned as me when it was, almost 6 a ball. So, yeah, the other guys came on, O'Rourke came back on, and Jameson came back on, and Henry got to have a little break. Santner said after the game that, he thinks he's okay. We'll see how he pulls up over the next couple of days. But, he'll be an important person because even in that semi-final, India-Australia semi-final, we saw Shami, contribute with the ball. Really, really important bowler. These Dubai pitches, they seem they seem harder to read, I would say, than maybe the Pakistan wickets are. It seems like both sides at different times, or all the sides that have been to Dubai, they might expect it to not spin as much or spin more, or it doesn't seem like it's as easy. So I think having those options, having Matt Henry has been such a great leader of that white ball bowling attack for a couple of years now. So he's going to be a very important player, and hopefully he's going to pull up fine.
And in terms of, I guess, that final and Lip, you mentioned the pitches there in Dubai, a little bit different to the ones that we've seen in Pakistan. From what you've seen throughout the tournament so far, do you feel as if New Zealand, if everybody is fit, are going to go in with the same side as for this semi-final? And if not, what changes do you see? I guess you've got a 1,236-mile trip from Lahore to Dubai or there around, and India have got sort of 3 or 4 miles to get from their hotel to the ground. But we've been asked not to talk about that in our comments, so I won't, for example, mention that New Zealand have travelled 13,417 miles during the course of this tournament to India's 1,934, which was their initial trip from India to Dubai.
Look at you trying to wind everyone up. It's I said at the start of in our Champions Trophy preview, I honestly don't think because New Zealand's had to move around a bit. They've had different venues. I don't think the travel's been a big deal for New Zealand personally. Maybe I'm sure it was annoying for South Africa and Australia to go back and forth, sort of not knowing. Yeah. But for New Zealand, we had a week between those. We had a week in Dubai between those games. Sort of not too concerned. I think it's the same as you would have, most other tournaments. It is
absolutely. I'm just trying to get a bit of reaction in the YouTube comments, which I'm sure I will do. But you've got 4 days before this final. But back to the question: any changes do you think to that 11 if everybody's fit based on what you've seen pitch wise?
I don't think so. I think they've settled. As soon as Jameson came into the side, it seems like they've settled on the 11 that they want to play. They've got a very versatile lineup in terms of the options that they have. Santner mentioned it afterwards, and we've seen it throughout this tournament. They've got essentially four spin bowling all-rounders. So they've got 4 options there. They've got the 3 seamers. So they can go in a lot of different ways in how they want to manage their bowling. I think what I would actually like to see is maybe them be a bit more flexible in terms of their batting lineup. We saw it today a little bit. Probably in hindsight, you might have pushed Latham down the order and brought Phillips in.
Yeah, I texted that through to the Slack channel. I thought that was, in hindsight, didn't really have an impact, but that would have been an option.
Yeah, and even if we think about the New Zealand-India game that we saw, as soon as Latham came in, when Jadeja was bowling, and Kane and Daryl Mitchell were getting quite stuck. I did wonder if at that, before Mitchell, they might have brought Latham in at 4 to make it just easier to rotate strike. As soon as he came in, the left-right-handed partnership, it made it look much simpler to get off strike, and that's going to be the big key for New Zealand. I think they would have learnt a lot from that game that they played. I don't think they played badly. I thought they did pretty much 85% of what they probably wanted to do. They just let the Indian, or whether they let the Indian spinners or the Indian spinners were good enough that they just bowled a lot of dot balls, and they couldn't get off strike enough to sort of keep up with the rate and make India really work in the field. It was more New Zealand having to come up with different solutions. And the battle between Kane and Ravi Jadeja, and even if Ravindra gets that opportunity as well, is going to be fascinating, because you saw, as I said before, we saw it with Maharaj. The way you said it, you talked about Kane, the way he plays inside out, the way he's trying to invent things. Today he was trying to reverse sweep Aiden Markram, which is something we don't see very often from him. So yeah, I loved watching that battle as someone who loves spin bowling, and I was obviously a big fan of Kane Williamson. So I think the way that New Zealand's middle order goes about trying to handle those Indian spinners just about might decide this game. I mean, obviously a lot of firepower in India's batting lineup, but yeah, it's the battle between the spinners and the middle order that I'm really fascinated to see.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Fingers crossed it is a showpiece final, which, I think it's been a pretty good tournament, actually. We've had, plenty to talk about throughout the course of the tournament. Some fantastic individual performances and individual runs, none more so than Rachin, Ravindra at this tournament. So, long may that continue if you're a Black Caps fan. But there's a little matter of Virat Kohli and a few others to get past in the final. But shaping up to be a fantastic game of cricket on the 9th of March, Sunday, I think UK time, so it might be earlier with you guys. But we will, of course, be with you to, I guess, cover the final throws of this tournament on the Top Order podcast. We do hope you've enjoyed the content too far. Look forward to the comments, particularly around the air miles in our YouTube. But we will be back on the Top Order podcast for that final over the course of the next few days. Any final words as the victor deserves, Stu?
No, just love it. Loved today. Really fantastic performance, and now we get to dream. Now we get to have this moment of going into a final, which is always very, very exciting. If you've got another, Kane Williamson's going to get 100, Mitchell Santner's going to take 5 for prediction, then feel free to throw that as you sign us off. But yeah, really, really, really just thrilled with how today has gone and how New Zealand have performed in this tournament so far.
No, mate. All I'd say is, for me, this is probably, the final that, as a neutral, I would really want to see. India, New Zealand. I think they're quite rightly the two teams that deserve this from their form throughout the course of the tournament. So, yeah, really looking forward to the final. But for us on the Top Order podcast, Lippy's off to see if he can find a cheap ticket to Dubai. And I'm going to go and cook my dinner. So it's good night from me here in the UK and a good morning for Stu and all of his fellow Black Cap supporters down in New Zealand. But we'll see you on the next episode of the Top Order podcast. See you later. Good night.